looking at today. And I want to make sure the captions are on as well. I just got the recording in progress. So first, let me put that in the chat bar. We're going to do 5 7-minute pieces of Celia on some of her favorite subjects, surviving race. There'll be a section on the UNCRPD and some Article 17 stuff. We'll end it up, and then we'll do a nice little 7-minute piece on just the overall Cecilia natural element in New York City. And then we're going to do a little PowerPoint from Celia that Celia gave. And we're going to just concentrate on peer support and values, community values. So those will be the little 7-minute pieces. And then we'll leave it open for like 14 minutes in between the pieces for interaction. And you can tell stories that relate to the subject or Cecilia's stories. It's basically, this is Cecilia's day, and we'll take it from there. So let me try to work these electronics best I can and start off with just letting you know where everything comes from. And there's the links. Boom. Now I'm going to go to share screen. Or being a boomer, definitely challenged by technology. So stay with me. Oh boy, come on, baby. Go.
Ready to be an e-commerce pioneer? Bluehost has step-by-step WordPress onboarding to make creating and running a great online store easy as pie.
We're not seeing your screen.
I know. I'm setting it up. Okay, stand by. I'm trying to find the button for. Here we are. Stand by. Okay. Your screen. There it is. Here. Bear with me. Get this. Everyone can see my screen?
Human rights activist, trauma survivor. I'm also a breast cancer survivor. You know, I'm a lot of surviving in my life. What has helped me in my recovery is finding the consumer survivor extirpation movement. I kind of knew when I was locked up in the hospital and taking a lot of drugs. Well, I was giving a lot of drugs that it was something more than this, something more. I got to meet some really cool people. I met Judi Chamberlin. I met Howard Harp. I met at night. I met all these people. I was just blown away by them, you know. And I said to Judi, I said, "Who's allowing you to be doing alternatives?" And she laughed because I think people need to understand in mental health, you're not really allowed to do anything. They tell you what it is that they want you to do. And here she's doing what she feels is good for her and her spirit and her activism. And I was just blown away. And I came back home and I just was in the movement at that time. And I was starting to spread the message of self-help, because at that time it was self-help and advocacy. Language has changed through the years. So before, you know, or you're a consumer, you're a survivor, now you're a human rights activist. So peer advocate, you know, different terms. But I really believe that people can recover and people have a story to tell and people can support each other by listening to the story. And, you know, just listening helps people feel like they're not alone. And I feel when I'm talking to someone in the movement or a friend or a family member, and they really are validating me and my experience, it's like I'm on the top of the world. And I think that's what's missing for people is connection. And I think if we have connection, all the other issues, life, the mental health system, you can get through it. And I think celebrating, some of our leaders from the past and learning from them helps us get through the different stages and the new experiences that we're going to experience in human rights. So to me, we have all these problems with mental health, forced electroshock, all of those things are there. But if you have the people together working on it, fighting for change, social change, then you're not alone. MindFreedom, I think, has really helped people come together, and not just survivors of the system, but all people who want to fight human rights. I just think that we all should be working together. And I think the message is now, we have been talking to each other for a long time. And now it's time to talk to people in the public about what these issues are, because someone in my family can be dealing with mental health. My son, it's not a separate issue, mental health over here, mental illness over here, it's everywhere. And so we have to address it. And we have to let people know there are alternatives. There are people that are there to connect with you. You don't have to be afraid. But I do think the label is stigmatizing. Whatever people want to call themselves, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever, you're a person first. And I think that's missing. And so I think some of the stigma campaigns have not been that successful. You're not a disease, you're a person. I struggle with that, with the label. Am I somebody's daughter? Am I somebody's mother? I think that's what's missing. And that's why it's so hard for people to really connect with mental health, So I think that over the years, I have taught my family, for one, that you have to support people where they're at. And it's not about drugs. It's about all different kinds of approaches. And I have, for me to stay well, I have done meditation. I'm a Reiki 2 practitioner, and I'm very happy about it because that's what keeps me together. Now, this is just me. Other people have other ways that they heal. But I need to do that. I need to breathe more, exercise. I choose to not have my mind clouded. I choose to just feel whatever it is. Depression, sadness, loneliness, all those feelings, and cope with it. People struggle with the messages that you never get well. I was told I would never get married, I'd never go to school, I'd never be a mother. And I've gone to college, I have a son, I'm married. So imagine someone telling you that and you internalize that, and then you don't become your best self because someone has said you can't do those things based on a psychiatric disability. You get down on what the public is thinking. I don't think they're caught up to recovery and human rights and mutual support, peer support, trauma-informed things. I don't think that they caught up to that. They look at someone who's labeled with a mental illness, they said, well, maybe they're violent, maybe they'll act up, or, so they don't see us as people, and they need to. So they have to catch up to us. To be a survivor of psychiatry is you survived the mental health system. You survived forced electroshock. You survived taking drugs or being forced to take drugs. I think MindFreedom, you can have a choice, if you want to take psychiatric drugs. But when you're forced to, we're against that, and we will fight with you to stop that. We're not, everything should be your choice, informed decision making. When the system imposes that because you have a diagnosis that you must take drugs, oh, by the way, we feel you need to have electroshock without your consent, that's just wrong. And that's what we've been fighting for a very long time. It's not a quick fix. It's not a pill, and that's going to solve my whole life. When you go into the system and you're stripped of your dignity and your rights, that's traumatic.
I don't know, in other states have been, have been reporting, have been, that they've been upset that some of this toxic material is heading to their states. And yes, they're every day, the residents here say they want more answers.
Sorry about that. All right. Who would like to lead off?
Anybody inspired?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name's Mary. I'll just say real quick, I met Celia 2 times, as I recall. I went to a protest of the American Psychiatric Association in New York City. I'm from Philadelphia once, and I also went up there once for a one day. It was organized by Celia. It was a one day where there were speakers and things, and I went up there for that. And I just want to say how touched I am by Celia. I mean, it's so good to see her talk. She, as someone said, she was so kind, and just the way she looked at me in my eyes and treated me like I was just a person without, I was not my diagnosis to her. I can't get over, once I was diagnosed and I was in the hospital and all that. I mean, I have friends, they just always treat me like I'm my diagnosis. I'm now mentally ill, and I'm now like not one of them. And she never, ever, she just cut through all that. And it was so powerful, so strong. And the second time that I met her, I sat there. I ended up on the train with her by accident. And the way she talked to me, it was just so kind. I will just never forget it. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter, you mentioned in the chat that you wanted to discuss the state of the consumer survivor movement. Do you want to say something now?
There, hi. Oh, well, I didn't expect to get on here, but I mean, to go live here, but sure. I used to have conversations with people there, MindFreedom people, about 20 years ago, or maybe even maybe it was 25 years ago. And in the last year, I've tried several times to connect, and it seems like it's been invisible. I've tried to connect with, I used their little instrument and put my name in and asked for an email. I didn't know if it was still active or what.
Well, we're here now.
Yeah, I'm very glad of that. It seems like when 25 years ago, it seemed like it was much easier to connect. There used to be that live, that mail thing, that email discussion thing that was always going, and that was very informative to me because when I first kind of got in this mental health system, I had no idea that there was, all the games and everything. And I was so glad to connect with that email and have peers, come out and say, now that's ended. It was abused, I understand. I mean, it would be something like that would be open to abuse without moderation. But still, I mean, the MindFreedom website, that's kind of static. I'm glad it's there, but it's very static. It's old and unchanging, and it's not interactive. So I don't know exactly what I want to say. It's just that I've tried to email and tried stuff and I haven't been unsuccessful. I tried to connect. It sounds like there's an active group in Vermont that's kind of more where, people can call in and talk anytime and stuff.
Well, we meet the
So-
first Wednesday of every month. So you can join us here every Wednesday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, once a month on Wednesday.
Okay, I didn't know that. So that's new to me. Good.
And
Hi,
I'd like
Mary.
to add, I'm sorry that you haven't had responses. And I know I see Carolyn has a hand up, but I just want to say that I'm sorry for that. We're a pretty lean machine these days at MindFreedom. But I'm gonna take this back to the board and talk about how we can be more available to people. But as I said, we're a lean machine and we're always looking for volunteers and, but but I don't want to talk because I see Carolyn has a hand up.
Oh, it's all right. I don't mind. I don't mind waiting. I think I have a question because I recognize this and it's something I've never really done. Other than I've had post-traumatic stress disorder and I still have residue of post-traumatic stress from trauma. But I have never gone by any diagnosis other than that, okay? Because it's trauma related. Mine was based on reckless driving. And so I've never repeated or agreed or done anything with the fraudulent psychiatry mental health society or whatever you want to call it. I haven't really ever recognized myself or describe myself with a label that some industry for money and greed tried to give me because I don't agree with it. And so because I know mine was all fabricated. And so I know people struggle with other things in life, some mental, I like to call it mental challenges, if you will, cognitive challenges, because when we say illness, well, what does that actually mean? That you're sick or, what does that mean? When we say that we're ill, when you're mentally ill, I wonder if people talk about if that's where the part of the stigmatism is still kind of lingering is because the language hasn't changed yet. I guess I'm trying to understand why people just in general relate to some bogus label that somebody gave them unless you really agree with their label, because I think until the person like anybody starts saying, well, that's not who I am, so why repeat it? There's no reason to repeat it. Stop repeating some label that somebody tried to give you unless you're in a court matter or something that, is going to clarify things for you. Because mine really would be reckless driving. My charge would be, my label would be reckless driving and an isolated incident of reckless driving. And, it sounds kind of dumb for mental illness because it's not a mental illness, right? And so maybe if there's a way that people could talk and just not say whatever bogus label somebody gave them, to just leave it, I guess. What do you think about that? Why recognize it or associate it with yourself if that's not who you are? Why continue feeding into their narrative, I suppose. David, do you have anything to say, anybody?
Does somebody else want to jump in on that? I think that's a good, that's certainly a controversial subject. Some people embrace their labels and other people don't.
I think this is Deborah, excuse me, Deborah Trueheart. Let me turn my video on. I couldn't find the hand thing.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
People are welcome to just jump in.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I'd like to
Where,
just
how
respond.
do you do the hand? How do you raise the hand?
It's under reactions. If
I
you
looked
hit
under
react-
reactions. I couldn't find it.
it's on the bottom of the reactions. It
Oh, there's
says
3 little dots. There's probably more.
So
No,
I also
no.
sometimes just actually raise my real hand if you can't.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think that works as well.
All right, continue.
Okay, I'd like to just briefly respond to Carolyn, because I had a similar experience in that I escaped patienthood. And I think that's a really important distinction. it's much easier for those of us who were never, quote, a patient in a psychiatric hospital.
Oh, I was.
Well, my issues were also trauma. And
Oh.
I happened to find on the day that I couldn't stop crying, I
Oh.
walked into a private therapist who didn't take my insurance. And so therefore there was never a diagnosis. So I never heard any kind of pathological language. So I wasn't told that the responses that were troubling me, I wasn't told that those were symptoms of a mental illness. When you're told that you have mental illness, it's another whole layer of things on top of the trauma to try to recover from. And so those of us who escaped patienthood, I think it's just much easier. And I know that it's easy to say, well, don't just take on the label. I never took on the label.
Yeah.
And but then when I was introduced to the peer movement, these were my peeps, even though I escaped patienthood, because we've all had the experience of trauma. And so I feel very fortunate that that never happened to me. But I think it's a little simplistic to just say, well, don't take on the label, because
Yeah, I'm not-
most people, it wasn't their choice. They were given this label, and at the same time, they were given that label, they were given the doom and gloom of you will never recover. When somebody tells you that, when you're in your most vulnerable state, it's really hard to just slough that off. People do eventually, but I think that it's a whole nother process.
Yeah,
So
and I
that's all
didn't, yeah, Deborah, I didn't mean to simplify it or anything. I was just a question because I've never recognized and I have survived patienthood. So I've survived 1,200 hours of patienthood for an isolated incident of erratic driving on private property. And so I was chemically lobotomized. And
Oh, I'm so sorry.
yeah, so it's, and I was put in an asylum for 3 days, yes, for a physical injury. And so I'm trying to understand, because I never went through I didn't go through psychiatry. I didn't ask for psychiatry for help. I asked psychology for help, who started prescribing me drugs. And so psychologists really are not legally allowed to prescribe drugs. Only psychiatrists and a medical professional are able to do that. But I see what you're saying. But yeah, it wasn't to simplify anything at all, or to diminish embracing trauma or anything like that to recover. But I do understand what you're saying about, like, it adds another layer of, I think, systematic trauma, if you will, the system
Right.
failing you for not being able to get help. Yeah. But yeah, not simplifying and not diminishing at all. Yeah, just asking, how other people are relating to their diagnosis, I guess, if you will.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah,
Hi.
thank you.
Hi, this is Amy in the Bay Area, California. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Really enjoyed hearing Celia talk, and that was kind of like the first time I met her. And she's really right about we're lacking connection with one another. I know I am. I have an adult son. I just got an adult person in my life. Too late, recorded. Oops. I'm not paranoid. They really are after us. Okay, sorry. I digress. Anyways, in and out of the mental health incarceration forced drugging system. And I believe in the Soteria model. We are self-healing beings. And Carolyn, we need to tell ourselves a new story, okay? Because we've been led a bill of goods. You've heard Gabor Mate speak. You need to hear him speak. The myth of normal in a toxic culture. This is a correct response. The medical insurance industry is trying to make lifelong patients out of all of us. Okay, so this is not just the mental health industry who is lobotomizing us in so many different ways. YouTube can be lobotomizing, but my point being is I'm so thankful for this group, and I need to be here because we need to start talking about the types of models we don't have group homes that are going to help people not to go back into the system. The group home in the community, after a person is in a locked setting, been traumatized, they're not going to do well without the proper support in the community. And I can attest to you, they really don't exist, as we all well know. So, but I know that we can create them. But we have, it's a fairly big idea. But I do have an interesting YouTube video by Dr. Sean Baker and this other gentleman who started, assisted facility homes where he was changing people's diets and treating them, as you say,
yeah.
means that they actually started to recover, which is unusual in an assisted living place. So my point is the solutions are out there. We need to reframe our stories. And like she said, we need to learn to live with our emotions, right? We don't need a pill for every emotion. It's probably a proper response to what we're going through. And when I hear somebody else say, and then I'll end, we are able to think through these thoughts when we talk to others and talk it out. It's like you are helping me think through what the heck I'm like musing over or causing myself drama with. Okay, every thought is a biochemical response of fight or flight or relaxation. So thank you so much for this time and space.
I see John has had a hand up for some time.
Yeah, I just want to appreciate everybody who's here. I'm a little nervous to share with this wonderful group of people who are so conscientious about their own recovery and the recovery of others. Wow, to actually see Celia, that's very moving. I never had the opportunity to meet her. I do consider myself a psychiatric survivor in Eugene, Oregon. I've been involved with MindFreedom for, 20 some years. I was in the topic of labeling, I think is very, very important. I mean, even the label of recovery for me sometimes is a tough one, because I do like this idea of what Amy was saying about reframing our story. And, there's such social construct around words, and they're not true necessarily, but there's a social construct around very many things that we use as labels. And this is not new. I mean, people have talked since, the 40s or the 50s that mental illness is not a thing. It's simply a social construct. But at the same time, now I did spend quite a few years in special education, and I never forgot one of my instructors saying, you have to be very careful on giving someone a label, that this is a special needs child, for instance. And I think a big reason for labels is to get services, is to get support. And I have to be very cognizant of how I consider that I have a very friable limbic line. Sometimes I'm kind of in a dream-like state almost. But in order for me to get support with someone else, to get past my drama, I love that word, to reframe my story, sometimes I actually use the P word. I use the word psychosis because it does put a certain frame of reference. I do prefer, 2,500 years ago, I started recently, a couple years back, getting involved in Buddhism. And the word delusion is not a negative word per se. So I try to accept who I am in that kind of a framework. But the medical model certainly exacerbates my own trauma and has. And I'm just really honored to be here. And it does, I want to cry. I mean, wow, what a wonderful experience that we have here as humans together. Thank you.
That's good. I'm going to keep on this theme here because we're going to just go into some peer support values. And this is a presentation that Celia did during the COVID years. So it's a PowerPoint presentation that we found, but I thought it's a good prompt to keep the conversation going in that. So just bear with me as I share the screen or attempt to, and get you lined up for 7 more minutes as Celia, let's see.
As you're doing that, I'm going to share a story because I remember Ed Knight, who also came before a lot of us, and he always said, hold on to your delusions, for those are your dreams.
And speaking of, we've got another great saying that's Stephanie Thomas. He's from the ADAPT community. And Mike Oxford, they always looked at the medical model as, we're just a crop to be harvested. And it runs right along the whole general theme of living with a disability and trying to get services. Let's see here. Can everyone see my screen? We live? Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about, peer support back. So as I mentioned before, self-determination is important. Validation. So even if you don't know which way you're going, you may be having a tough time, or maybe in some emotional distress. What helps, and what has helped me, is that no one's saying, well, you shouldn't be feeling that way, or according to your mental health diagnosis, this is how you really supposed to be feeling, this is how you're supposed to be acting. But instead, with peer support, someone, my fellow peer, can just be listening to me, talking about whatever, maybe not making so much sense, but just telling my truth, and they're just listening. And that makes a world of difference. Mutuality, things that you share together, experiences. Hope. Hope it's a cornerstone of everything. You can't always see hope, but you know that it's there. It's just like you don't always see the air you breathe, but you know it's there, right? So hope is always there. Trust is important for peer support. A value is that we trust the people that are supporting us, helping us heal, that we trust them. Because the trust goes a long way. And sometimes when when you don't have that trust, it's very, very hard to get it back in peer support. And of course, advocacy is important. Advocacy is energizing. You're advocating for yourself. You also could be advocating for others. It takes you off of yourself into, supporting others. And this year, and I know this has probably been said many times, but we were talking about self-care. What does self-care mean to you? What does community care mean? And this was all during COVID. How do you deal with your own crisis? So that is also a part of our values. Autonomy, you want to be autonomous. Healing, I think, is a goal. Whatever is that you need to heal.
Phone is gone here at least.
Gone here.
Scott, we can't hear anything.
And mental and physical integrity, I can say, is.
No one can hear anything?
No,
No.
There was no
Nothing.
audio?
No audio.
Oh, but there was it stopped halfway.
Yeah, now it stopped, so we
Yeah, I
can't
did.
tell.
I just stopped it just so I could listen to you.
Oh, I mean, we could
Just
hear.
just before it stopped, we heard it for a few seconds.
Oh, okay.
No.
Let me play it and see if you can hear.
We heard it through self-care and community.
Very important. And what this means.
Can you hear it now?
Yes.
you want to have control over your own
Yes.
mental status. So anything that you do not want to be a part of your body, like meds, and I'm not saying that people who want to take meds, I think it's a choice, but if you don't have a choice and your mental integrity is being compromised, that's a problem. And also physical. You know, we have a right to have the integrity to say, I need this, I don't need that. You know, please, you know, respect my wishes and respect who I am. And just go beyond the paradigm that, oh, you have a mental illness, you have a diagnosis. So that means you don't know what it is you want to do in your life because you have that label. And for me, I have to tell you that having a mental health diagnosis did not help me heal and to feel good about myself. I always felt something about me was literally sick. What is going on with me, just me, that I'm given this label and I don't feel good about it. You know, I'm just an illness. So I'm not Celia anymore. I'm not a mother. I have a son now. You know, I'm somebody's daughter and sister. So all I am now is just an illness. So I know for others that helps them in their own recovery, but for me, it has not helped. So just want to mention that. And our personal story is always important to share with others and the lived experience. And always to know that we're always on a journey of discovery. You know, what I knew then, I know more now than I knew in the 80s, but I'm still learning and I'm still growing. And always know that there's always growth in your life and things you can learn. And trauma informed. Before we weren't even using trauma. Like, you know, women and others could not go through trauma or be re-traumatized by being in the mental health system. That it didn't really make any sense. But we know that, you know, trauma is really a part of our lives. And we have to work through that and work with people who want to help us get through the trauma. Doesn't mean it always goes away, but it, you know, kind of evolves in our life.
Sounds out again.
Yeah, it's done. That clip is done.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've had one person actually ask a question in here that some folks might have some insight into, and that's how do you get peer support into a psychiatric hospital? Anybody have any ideas about that?
I think the tough thing is how do you get one out of a hospital? Not how does one get inside a hospital?
No, it's how to get a peer support advocate into the hospital.
Oh, wonderful question.
Well,
Susan Musanti, you are muted.
I know,
there.
I figured it out. Thank you. Took me a little while. So, there are models for this. There's something called peer bridgers. New York, State of New York, NIAPRS, the New York Association of Psychosocial Psychiatric Rehabilitation, started something called peer bridgers. And they're peers, people with a lived experience who have been in the hospital. They work out an agreement with the hospital and they go in, they meet with patients, and then they kind of walk out the door with them. It was done for a little while in Alaska and New Mexico. I don't know if New Mexico still has peer bridgers. That's one model. There are other ways to do it. The other thing that I'm learning about recently in Alaska is that they have people with lived experience who are getting trained while they're in prison. So part of their prison kind of rehabilitation is they can go to this training and they're working as peers within the prison. And then when they get out, they kind of go back and forth again. It's a little similar model. So it happens. It's not easy to get permission to go in the hospital because that's a little threatening to them, because they see the diagnosis as we've been talking about, and not the person who is helping others to get out in a good way. So there's models, but I'm sure other people know of these things. This is just the one that I'm aware of.
Yeah, if I can, Susan, so on the peer bridges, if somebody goes in to help somebody, what do they do with them after that? I mean, where do they go? Because if people have been on forced drugs and things like that, I mean, what kind of support is there? Was that where the Soteria House things would come into?
Well,
or friends?
They're two distinct things. So there are hardly any Soteria houses. I'm working with a group in New Mexico who's trying to get one going, but we hope to get one and then 5 more. That's Israel's doing that. They've got 4 now and they're aiming for 10. But it's been embraced by their health ministry, whatever they call their health ministry. So the peer bridger model, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert, I don't know if we have anybody on Harvey or anybody like that from NIAPRS. People actually go in the hospital, visit with somebody. They may do it individually or they may do it in groups, and then they keep in touch with them when they get out of the hospital. They don't abandon them out of the hospital. They walk the walk out the door and help them link to services. So there was I worked with one peer bridger program like a long time ago, and our big issue was the hospital didn't want to let us in, but then we
Of course not.
I know, right? So, but
of course they wouldn't want to let you in. You would know what was going on. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they thought we were going to do, like help people escape. I wasn't sure. But then we had a resource room, and literally it was across the parking lot from one of the hospitals, and literally the peer bridgers would like walk the person out the door to the resource room and say, we have housing, we can help you find housing, we can help you find. And we didn't have housing, but we had the resources. We knew where they could go to get that kind of. But that's not, I mean, I don't know that all peer bridgers work that way, but that's the way we did it. That was in New Mexico when we did it, but I've seen it. In New York is really the gurus on that. And so somebody from New York can probably speak more to it.
Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I like what I wanted to kind of touch on some of the things Amy was saying, just we can heal. We don't need drugs to heal. That's part of the disaster. And I'm not an anti-drug kind of person either. I'm anti-overdosing people.
Dr. Gabor-Mate says that the sickness usually comes from an emotional
trauma that is embodied in our a biology, and so just like Celia said, to be able to sit there and talk with people and listen to people, without being their mother, the only person who does that. Okay, as much as we've come a long way, he needs somebody else other than me. But and we can build it. Yes, we are self-healing beings. Yes, a new story needs to be told.
Yeah, when you talk about that, Amy, you're so right about processing, because that's part of healing, and I think I've heard it referred to as, because if you keep it, part of it's ruminating and part of it isn't ruminating. Part of it is just not being able to process, because when you have had trauma, processing out loud is processing, right? Because if you don't process out loud, then you're pretty much swirling in a trauma coffin. That's really.
Can I share my psychosis moment today, just to give you an idea? because I shocked myself, and it was just earlier today because there's a lot going on. Can we just address there's a lot going on, and that's okay. But I yelled so loud. I literally wanted to hear something. And where, where did I hear you have to let people somehow process the anger, that intense emotion, because it does get bottled up. It truly does. So I cried and I broke down, and then I felt so much better. Oh my goodness. Yes. So, but I had somebody who was there listening to me. She was there holding space for me. I didn't do that. I mean, she lived through this experience with me. And so it came to a head today, fruition, lucky me. And, and we got to move on here. I can't sit in, the negative past and bring it into my future. It just creates more of the same. And that's what we have to teach each other. We have not been taught any of this. Okay. We have been lied to. We have no idea who we are or what we're capable of. So that's the story I want to, try and tell people. That's what I tell my son. He's not sick. The system is sick. Okay. This is a proper response. In the meantime, he's on a lot of meds, a lot. Unbelievable. And I'm such an anti-drug person. I don't even go see the doctor anymore. I'm over it. I'm done. Thank you very much. I just paid a bunch of medical bills for not following the doctor's advice, okay? Because they want to put you on a pill for every ill, and that's just not me. I'm sorry. I use my food as medicine and other thoughts, mind over matter, turning thoughts into things, people. That's what we're doing, okay? That's what I'm doing. And getting charge of my emotions and thoughts and encouraging others to do that. That's where the power lies in this moment. So thank you for this opportunity to share what I'm learning. And by the way, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is, because I so want to build a tiny home community. Tiny home communities and the potential there, where we take care of us, right? We take care of us. No matter what our different abilities are, everybody has something to contribute, no matter where they are, just by being life itself. You don't have to achieve anything. I don't have to have a life, as Sadhguru says, I am life, okay? So, and all life is sacred, okay? And we need to remind each other how precious we are as we seek to self-annihilate, okay? Because we are all absorbing this self-annihilation theme that's unfolding. We live in a toxic culture. The myth of normal doesn't exist. So let's create it. Thank you.
Amy, I think that's wonderful. I just want to point out that David Oakes put a message in the chat about a conversation that he had with Celia, and he's offering to send you what they talked about if you let him know.
I put my email in there.
I just wanted everybody to not miss that.
Yeah, when we're talking about peer support, one of the things that I think gets overlooked too is that when you're a parent, if you're talking to other parents, it's not always helpful. What you need to talk to is people who are experiencing what your child is experiencing. And so the peer support is not your peer, but your child's peer, so that when your child can't communicate to what's going on, sometimes an adult who's experiencing something similar to them can explain it so that you can understand and know better how to support them.
I love that perspective, because I always say, I just really rethought something. Thank you for sharing that. I always say a peer is someone who's closer to your experience. So I always say a family member is a good peer to a family member because their experience is as a family member. But I think what you just said is really important, and I'm gonna reshape what I've been thinking about this. Thank you for that.
Well, it kind of goes like, if you don't got it, you don't get it. You know, that's what the power of peers is all about.
Well,
So
for
you-
me, it was my son was diagnosed with DID, um, dissociative identity disorder. And the first year after the diagnosis, I fought it every way I could, talking to a psychiatrist, using medication, doing all sorts of things. And then I spoke to somebody with DID who said, you don't need any of that stuff. Just accept him for who he is and how he is and love him for who he is. And I did that. And the year that we were medicating him was trauma after trauma after trauma. It was a horrible year. And once I accepted him for who he was, and that he had all these different personalities and how to live with all these people, it became okay. Now I don't mind that he has the diagnosis at all. It's like part of who he is. I
well,
love him, and
Kurt
I
Vonnegut
love
had
all 12 of them.
Kurt Vonnegut had a great quote. There's 10 men in me and I don't know any of them. Kilgore Trout.
I love it.
I love that. And I had a really good friend who also has passed like so many before us. And we'd be having a conversation and he'd say, I don't know about that, Susan. I need to take it up with the committee and I'll get back to you. And I loved it. I knew exactly what he was saying.
So should we listen to Celia talk about surviving race, one of her big movements? She started that back in 2014, I think, with Black Lives Matter to build a bridge. And she was on a conference call with Leah Harris. Leah's out of Arlington, and that she does and we're going to have a little interview later with Leah on the UNCRPD with Celia. But here's a little 7-minute piece on one of something that was close to her heart. I'm going to see if we can do this now. Still in a share screen. Oh, come on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Celia Brown, and I'm the co-founder of Surviving Race, the intersection of injustice, disability, and rights. Surviving Race began in 2014 to stand
Pat, can you turn it up a little?
around the country who were responding to the law enforcement officers responsible for the deaths of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Gardner in Staten Island, New York. We came together as people with psychiatric histories, many of us people of color, to end the pattern of racist violence ending in deadly force. We have a Surviving Race as a Facebook group, and it was created to explore the intersections between race and disability and human rights movements. Over the last 6 years, we have become more organized and are now working on multiple fronts to develop and put to use a platform that represents our concerns, demands, and offerings. You can see now that we still have a lot of work to do. We just had a police killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and many, many more. I want to bring your attention to one of the platforms that we have developed in Surviving Race. It's called 5 Ideas for Safety from the Police. And I'm just going to review some of them. So we believe to stop calling 911 the police for psychiatric or mental health reasons. Instead, call a friend, a family member, a community or a religious organization, a support line, or a trauma-informed alternative. we must eliminate the practice of psychiatric profiling, of ineffective practices that don't justify someone who has an actual or perceived history of a psychiatric diagnosis or institutionalization is often used to justify police killing or brutality. We want to advocate for organizations to be available 24 hours. A mental health or peer-run organization, we have to make the paradigm shift and stop instructing people to call the police when they're not available. And so we want to ban the practice of outgoing voice messages of mental health organizations instructing people to call the police. Now, this is really going to take all of us to do this. We have been accustomed to, when there's an emergency, we call 911. But the police don't have the expertise to deal with mental health concerns, and they really should be dealt with a peer specialist, like I said, a family member, a friend, a religious organization, a mental health organization, rather than the police. So we have to really look at ourselves, unless it's a complete emergency. The emergency is in a mental health diagnosis. That's not the emergency. So we have to stop looking at it that way and look to see that the person needs support. They need emotional support. And that this is what we want to share with others. During March 2020, this is when COVID 19 coronavirus started here in New York and other places in the US. And Surviving Race decided to create a network of programs for people who were staying at home. It's called Surviving Race Community Care Peer Support Network. We have many programs that we have during the week. They're on our GoToMeeting platform, and now we have Zoom, and it's usually an hour or an hour and a half. So just to name a few programs, one program that I co-facilitate with Tina Brooks, also from New York, is called Sister Circles. And this is where you learn about the origin of sister circles and how they can be used to promote well-being. We particularly have this sister circle for women of color, but we also have allies. So we focus on race, class, gender-based oppression, particularly inequities in healthcare for women of color, and racial disparities. Another program we have is called Reframing Crisis with my colleagues, Jonathan Edwards and Ivana Bond. That's also an hour. And what they are discussing is how are we taking care of ourselves? How are we doing self-care during COVID and beyond? We also talk about self-care as community care. What are we doing for the community during this time, during this crisis? We have a number of programs that you can access on Surviving Race. One of them is Women, Power, and Trauma. It's been recorded on YouTube, and I'm a panelist on it, as well as Tina Brooks and Cheryl Shaw. So I hope that you will view that video. And we also have a new video that my colleague and friend Jen Bertrand did called Pride Panel 2020. And that's celebrating Gay Pride in this month, which is June 2020. So we're gonna have a lot more offerings, and we hope that you will be able to view them and share them with your friends and your colleagues. and family members and your peers. So to get in touch with Surviving Rage, you can join our Facebook page, Surviving Rage, the intersection of justice, disability, and human rights. Or for more information, email us, lowercase, survivingrage2014@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening. Hello, everyone. My name is Celia Brown, and I'm the co-founder.
So David, you had your hand up from before. Did you still want to say something?
Yeah. Yeah, Elijah will repeat me.
I'll be repeating for David.
Yeah, two quick things.
Two quick things.
First of all, in chat, I list the Highlander statement.
First of all, in the chat, I listed the highlighter statement.
Highlander.
Oh, highliner statement.
Yeah, because a few decades ago, that's when Celia decided to take leadership at MindFreedom.
Decades ago, that's when Celia decided to take leadership at MindFreedom.
With that statement.
With that statement.
So please take a look at that and get that out.
So please take a look at that and get it out.
And secondly, if you put your email in chat, I'll email you about the discuss of the mind justice.
Secondly, if you put your email in the chat, one more time.
I'll send you about mind justice.
I'll send you an email about mind's justice.
Like within our psychiatric survivor community.
Within our psychiatric survivor community.
How can allies support the voice of marginalized people?
How can allies support the voice of marginalized people?
I mean, forced outpatient drugging.
Forced outpatient drugging.
For instance, is simply racist.
For instance, it's simply racist.
Okay.
Okay.
So, we all know about Celia's incredible warmth.
We all know about Celia's incredible warmth.
I mean, I was astounded.
I was astounded.
I mean, decades of nonstop warmth.
Decades of nonstop warmth.
I think I saw maybe a pistol once.
I think I saw her pissed off maybe
Deborah,
once.
my wonderful boy, Deborah used to meet her.
Oh, yeah.
And her warmth was core to her community organizing.
Her warmth was core to her community organizing.
My friend who commented earlier.
My friend who commented earlier.
Not to knock him.
Not to knock him.
But Celia would never get on a memorial and criticize the person's group.
But Celia would never get on a memorial and criticize the person's group.
I mean, it was funny.
It was funny.
Anyway, warmth.
But anyways, warmth.
I hope my extreme accident has helped teach me that.
I hope my extreme accident helped teach me that.
But I tell you, no matter what in our movement.
But I tell you what, no matter what in our movement.
Connecting with people like Celia.
Connecting with people like Celia.
That is our reward.
That is our reward.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, David. Do you want to toot your own horn a little? There might be people here who don't know who you are.
Google me.
David says Google him.
It's about Celia.
This is about Celia.
So I want to jump in and say, I started by talking about, the people who have been advocates and paved the way. And I hope everybody knows that David has been an amazing paver of the way and advocate. And it's been a while. I'm so glad to see you. I love your wisdom always. Thank you.
Well, I just had to mention that her suggestion that we don't want police to respond to crises. We would rather have clergy or regular people or what have you. But my personal feeling is if that person is having trauma and we just want to go offer support, but there's no place to go rest and feel safe, they're just going to be fearful about being put back into the system. So it doesn't matter who shows up. Their biggest fear is being put back into the system and forced drugged. I mean, because that's how it usually ends up. Because there's no place for them to go be safe in that mode of breakdown, you know? So, and you know, in terms of what David was saying, David, how do we have to build it. We have to build it. And we have that link that I sent you, that YouTube video, that guy, he has regulations to follow, but he's still doing things differently that is actually helping people and giving them a choice in the matter of if they want to engage in what is being offered. So build it and they will come, because the system is not going to let us take people off drugs. It won't.
Thank you. I see that Emmy and April have hands up.
Oh, hello. Oh, can people hear me? Hello. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, yeah, I was supposed to do things, but I never. I'm really sorry, Sarah and Susan. Okay, for this Judi Zoom, but okay, yeah, I had the privilege of working with Celia, on the board of Center for the Human Rights of Users and Survivors of Psychiatry. Well, Celia always, I was saying that I need to come for a memorial because Celia was always so humble and unassuming, and just, you know, she always talk about like other people and all the things they're doing. And even just now in the video, you know, even when she's talking about what Surviving Race is doing, she'll be like, oh, I'm doing it this person and that person. And she would never really, you know, like, I mean, she's such a, you know, a huge figure in the movement, but she would never, you know, it's like, because she was so unassuming, it's hard to tell like how much she has done when just listening to her. So yeah, and I also like I never had a chance to meet Celia personally because I live in Singapore. But yeah, I remember we were supposed to meet, have a sort of like, supposed to go to New York, and we were supposed to eat apple pie together. We had such a nice conversation about not apple pie but pies in general and all the pies that people have in New York. And yeah, and just, you know, like what everyone was saying, the warmth that she had, you know, the love for her son and her father and her family and just everyone. I really felt like she was like a movement mother. And yeah, just, and I feel like also, you know, when she did work with the, you know, like in the with the state, it was always a sort of more, she didn't sell out. It's like she was doing like some sort of harm reduction. You know, she still held on to her principles. And yeah, just, yeah, she really cared about like each activist as a person and not just someone who was a, you know, a means to an end. And, you know, because sometimes activism is like that, like activists don't really get care themselves. And she was so always caring. And I remember I wanted to pay for interpretation, but I didn't really have the money. And she said, yeah, you know, that's the money your mom gave you. And, you know, like, you shouldn't have to. And yeah, that was really helpful because I kind of like, yeah, I don't know, always take care of myself. And I think Celia also like taught me that. And just, and the way that she cared so much about, you know, BIPOC issues as well. I know she was very interested in, you know, the digital divide, working with people in Africa. And and also with me and, you know, her humility and cultural humility and, you know, like, because in Singapore we communicate differently, and she would be like, yeah, you know, and she would like be interested in hearing about that as well. And just, yeah, then I would stop talking and just, yeah, so many feelings. And thank you so much for organizing this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Emmy. April, you wanted to say something?
It's my first time using Zoom. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're fine.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm really glad there's people that are from overseas. I wanted to ask if Sarah Smith is still here. They figured out what was going on with the MindFreedom Ghana. They're trying to find like Celia had an email with the funds, and just want to make sure that that cause stays open. And
I'd
I
be
think
happy
that
to talk to you about that in private. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, April, because that was
Okay.
a cause dear to Celia's heart. And so thank you for bringing that
Yeah.
up. So let's talk in private.
Okay, well, we can talk about that. I just haven't heard from you in like a month, so I think it's kind of hard to keep track right now because I am homeless, but I am still doing what I was telling you I was doing. I've been kind of censored by the press here, but I'm still trying to reach out. I think that people are losing sight in the psych survivor movement of this is no longer an isolated cause against, you know, big pharma and the drugging, that, you know, no matter which way you look at the crisis, whether you for or against the vaccine, big pharma didn't share. And I think that there's more people do need to do more reaching out, not just be insular and understand our movement, but like understand like a broader range of health concerns and disabilities and cultures, and stick together and, you know, not just talk about the same old things we've been talking about for 20-30 years here in the States. And I really think that we need to find creative ways to stick together. Right now I'm trying to travel around my homeless, and I gave up my housing to try to get a group vax to share a vial, and I'm trying to pressure Big Pharma to send doses overseas, but that's going to take an NGO, it's going to take press coverage, and I'm going to have to find some peers. Meanwhile, I'm reaching out to people and I'm learning more about connecting with other people who are homeless and more on the street people. And I found out the street people are actually pretty cool. You get told a lot of things when you're, you know, you're soon to be female about being on the street, but it's really the house guys everybody kind of warns you about. It makes sense, like Peter Pumpkin Eater has to have a pumpkin shell, right? If you are familiar with that rhyme, but it's I think that we're at a point where the fight against the forced drugging is really changing, and if people don't like pay attention to that and like put into a global perspective, then this movement's just going to go and fizzle out, because it's going to be, you know, not that relevant to the macro scale of what's going on out there. Because big pharma, literally either way you look at the vaccine, whether you're for it or you're against it, big pharma didn't share their own thing that they said was so good. So big pharma is literally a mass killer.
Thank you. I see Sarah has a hand up.
Yeah, Amy.
Yep. How do I put my hand down?
Oh, under reactions, there's an antidote for that reaction. I wanted to thank April. Thank you for coming to Judi's room, and thank you for sharing your thoughts about this being this issue of forced drugging being like a really wide
or
part
not
of
getting your drug.
Yeah, well, part of a bigger problem. I just wanted to build on that comment just slightly. And I challenge anyone in this meeting, after you get out of Judy's room, Google Lisa Edwards, Knoxville, Tennessee, for a videotape of what happened to an elderly disabled woman without medical insurance when she showed up at the ER, the emergency room of her local hospital, because she had a stroke and a shattered ankle. And because the hospital discharged her and wanted to put her back out in the street, she refused to leave because she knew that something was wrong with her.
Wow.
And they called the security called the police, and the police forced her in a paddy wagon. And within 20 minutes of being in police custody, she died from asphyxiation. And I'm just challenging people to look that up, because that could be anybody's mother, aunt, sister, or niece with a real medical problem or a real disability, and not getting the medical care that she needed landed her because she didn't have medical insurance. She ended up in police custody. And so that can happen to anyone. So I'm just saying this because I am in agreement with April that this is a part of a bigger problem. I don't think anybody in this Judy's room meeting believes that people in distress should just not get any support. When we're calling for human rights in the mental health system, we're not calling for, no medical care whatsoever. We're not calling for no support whatsoever. We're calling for fair and equitable housing. We're calling for housing without restrictions and conditions. We're calling for meaningful employment. We're calling for protection from toxic relationships, whether it's an abusive boss, an abusive boyfriend, an abusive family member. We're calling for people to have meaningful, helpful relationships, not toxic relationships, protection from violence and street crime, help with addiction if they so choose. But we're not calling for the kind of solutions that they're implementing in New York right now. Mayor Eric Adams wants to round up all homeless people and force them into guardianship.
Yeah.
The governor of California, Governor Newsom, wants to round up homeless individuals or people with addiction issues and force them into guardianship, conservatorship, as a way of subjecting them to forced treatment. So yeah, it's a part of the bigger problem. And I totally agree with April that our movement needs to intersect and we need to tell our stories to people in other movements.
Well, I got a sign on my bike right now that says take it or don't, but just stop them exploiting people. And I think if we could get to that point where we stop fighting over our different choices, so we could just fight for a choice, then we would bridge a lot more, and we wouldn't have Big Pharma getting so powerful by dividing everybody, because patients aren't the enemy, or potential patients, whichever.
Well, speaking of Lisa Edwards, one of the things I was struck by in looking at videos was the lack of respect. So all these other things are wonderful, and I'm not discounting any of them, but all of it starts with respect. And Lisa Edwards got zero respect from the police. Absolutely no respect whatsoever. She was handled physically like she was a rag doll. Her clothes fell off of her and she was exposed. She was in pain. It was horrific. And it showed how people who are marginalized have zero respect from the community. And so to expect all these other things, the first thing that has to happen, we have to respect people as human beings, because she wasn't treated like a human being. She was treated like a rag doll.
Okay.
Somebody put in the chat a link to some further information about Lisa.
And then we're gonna go to what Celia did on the global stage. Pulled this off of a podcast with Leah Harris, another great advocate for Mad in America. If you haven't went to the Mad in America podcast, it's a never-ending story of inspiration and desperation, unfortunately. But let me just cue this up for you, and we're gonna do it in 2 7-minute things. So I'm gonna do the UNCRPD piece, and we can have a conversation on a global level and everything. And then we can do a 7-minute piece on Article 17, which is from No Rights to Rights piece and that. So bear with me and let me cue this up for everybody. What? There.
Who is the former director of MindFreedom. He was trying to get a consultative status for MindFreedom, which means that in the United Nations you could consult and advise some of the UN bodies at that time. And so he asked me, and believe it or not, he asked Kate Millett, who's a famous feminist writer, activist, who was also a member of MindFreedom. And I had never met her. I didn't know anything about her. And I said, oh my God. So that here's another icon, you know? So we went together to the UN to sort of argue that we really needed a consultative status for the organization of people, of psychiatric survivors. Kate was very instrumental, and I had really helped as well. And at that same time, the Convention on the Rights with People with Disabilities was coming up for review. And that, for your listeners, it really means a treaty, and it has several articles that's legally binding. So I was there as a MindFreedom representative, and that was just such an honor for me to be at the United Nations. And I also brought other people to come as well. So it wasn't just me, it was other members who wanted to have experience of the UN. And then it was the World Network of Abusive Survivors of Psychiatry. And they were also leading the charge, mainly Tina Minkowitz. And so we all worked together as a coalition. And we also were working with people with physical disabilities, like the World Blind Union, the World Deaf. And we understood that their disabilities were going to be more visible, more understood than ours. So we worked so hard to have them understand what it's like to be a psychiatric survivor, what it's like to go through the mental health system and not have a choice most of the time, and that your rights may be taken away from you. And we also said that could happen to you. You could have a mental health issue, even if you're blind or deaf or, you know, or in a wheelchair. All of this could happen. So they started to really understand, and we said we're going to go in as one. We're not going to go in that his physical disabilities over here on one end, and here's people with, at the time, and it's still, I think the language is psychosocial disabilities. That's the term at the UN. We weren't going to let the powers that be separate us. Oh, wait, that's mental illness, quote, and that has nothing to do with physical disabilities. And that was the going trend. We said, no, we're all going to go in together as a coalition. And we did. And it was excellent. There were several meetings at the UN, and they had what they called side events. They're like workshops that anyone that's at the UN body can come to that event. It was usually in the afternoon, after morning sessions. And I would talk about the ADA, American Disabilities Act, and having reasonable accommodations and things that, you know, wasn't readily understood from everyone that, you know, who was witnessing people with who were psychiatric survivors. And it was just incredible experience. And so what I want your listeners to know that the Convention on the Rights with Disabilities was written by us. It wasn't written with people who didn't have a disability. So every article we looked at and changed or commented on. I'm really proud of this. And I just think this is one of the groundbreaking legislations of our time to have this convention. And it's really for people all over the world, but it can be used in the US, even though it's not ratified here in the US.
One of the articles of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is Article 12, which is about equal recognition before.
Should we go on, or does someone want to comment? Oops. Excuse me. Let's see here. Oh, boom. Okay, boom, 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 boom. Hello, everyone. Should we continue there's about 10 more minutes left, or does anyone have anything at this point with cross-disability collaboration, reaching out, becoming stronger through getting things done better together?
I'd like to hear the rest of it.
Go into Article 12 and more of the journey. Okay. From rights to no rights, or from no rights to rights. Okay, let me go back. Boom, 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 boom. Share screen.
Law, and is really about legal capacity, which is, as you know, a huge issue for those of us who are labeled with mental illnesses. You know, there's such a push, as you mentioned, you know, going back 20 years now, right, to reduce our rights and to involuntarily commit us, whether outpatient or inpatient. So I wonder if we could just talk a little bit about that article specifically, because as I recall, it was sort of one of the more controversial ones and one of the more challenging ones to get consensus on.
Yes, it was very challenging. And the reason is because, as you know, for years, people with psychiatric disabilities and still today are thought of that they cannot make a decision because of a perceived disability or, quote, mental illness. So you have no rights to even make your own decisions. This says that even if you're in a condition, emotional condition, you still have the right to make a decision. And that we wanted to make this a part of equal recognition upon the law, that if you needed support, you would do supported decision making. Like someone, whoever you trust, can help you with a decision. Moving into housing, like voting, or whatever it is, that it shouldn't be what they call substitute decision making or guardianship. That just based on you having a mental illness, you no longer have the right to make any decisions in your life. And that was a strong part for people who were there who are psychiatric survivors. We really wanted to make sure that that didn't happen to us or anybody else with disabilities.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think, again, even though the U.S. has not ratified this, is very unfortunate. That we can use this as an organizing tool in our advocacy and activism to resist efforts to take away our right to reduce our legal rights.
Yes. One other one I just want to mention that we worked on really hard is Article 17, and that is the right for mental and physical integrity. And what that means is that we have a right not to get, for instance, shock treatment. that is our right to say that is going to compromise mental and physical integrity. I just think it's so profound in that language. With so much different language at the UN that we don't really use outside of it. But here, I just think it's very profound, and I just want to thank everyone who was involved with it. Tina Minkowitz led the charge, MindFreedom, all the other disability organizations. I just feel so fortunate to have been a part of that.
Absolutely, and I would echo those thanks 100% to you and everybody else, who was involved. Michael murdered in Ferguson, and it really launched the entire Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
And I remember, at the time, a lot of us were talking about how can we be in solidarity with that movement? How can we figure out how to integrate those struggles into the work that is done with psychiatric survivors and people with disabilities? And it was right around that time that this whole idea of surviving race as an organizing principle and as a movement came to be. And so I'd love for you to sort of talk about that from your perspective.
Right. And I just want to credit you, Leah. I don't know if you remember, but you came up with the name Surviving Race because we all were on a conference call in 2014. I think you were on the call with other activists, and we were just talking about it. So I want to thank you. You may not remember that, but
well, it was a collective effort, and so I appreciate that.
I was so horrified by what happened to Michael Brown, just sitting in my living room watching it on television. And I just felt like, what can we do? And then I started to think of my son and my nephews. What if they go through this and they don't survive? I was really afraid, especially for my son. He's a young Black man, and everyone else. And then I started to think about what can we do as a movement, because we've done so many incredible things, to be a part of this time in our history. So yes, Black Lives Matter came, but what about our movement partnering with them and any other coalition that wants to fight for this? And I was so happy that you and other activists collectively said, we have to do something about this. This isn't right. Let's get involved. So we created Surviving Race really as a Facebook page, but also we do have, monthly calls to get outside of social media so we can all talk to each other. And we also were thinking, how can people of color, because it's always been, and I've heard this from everyone, the movement is basically white. And how do we work together? A lot of us have gone through similar things, forced shock, forced medication, all of this collectively we all go through. So what's keeping us separate is the race issue. And all of us have gone through different experiences, and that's okay. But how could we get together? So we had several dialogues with people who are white who were in the movement and people of color. And I think it was a start to do it, but I don't think it really brought us together. It helped us get dialogue, but we didn't have accountability that you talk about and help introduce that to me, Leah. Restorative justice, things that have been maybe in the criminal justice system, but not in the mental health survival world at all. And I'm just really excited about really looking at that to heal some of the things that have happened in our movement, and also to make people accountable in our movement as well. So I think this work is just beginning, and I'm really looking forward to all of us working on that and reading more about it. Our movement needs to be more mainstream than it is. And I know we've been doing this for a long time. We did manage to get into the media at some points in our movement history, but for some reason it's not totally happening, except I'm really thankful for Men in America for really bringing out a lot of the different issues that people are facing. So I'm grateful for Man in America. I think that's a really important tool and different articles and different perspectives on the mental health system, on drugs and everything else. I just think that it's great that that's there.
We all good?
I think so. I see Emmy has a hand up.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted, sorry, I can see myself. I'm so self-conscious. Yeah, I'll hide myself. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, gosh, sorry. Would you like to go to the, okay, sorry, I need to, okay, never mind. Okay, I'm just very self-conscious. Okay, yeah, I just want to say, yeah, just how appreciative Celia is, like, yeah, I forgot to mention that, like whenever she saw something that someone did, she'll be like, oh, like this person did that. And so it was also appreciative, but also I remember one of the things that Celia was really hoping for when we used to have our meetings was that she really wanted to have more young Black leaders, or like develop more young BIPOC leaders, and yeah, I guess that as part of her legacy, I was thinking like maybe I could mention like that's something that we could do to honor her, and I don't know, yeah, just yeah. I mean, I know that there are young BIPOC people, but maybe they're not as integrated with like the movement, or like maybe they're more peer support, but like in the older generation and the younger generation maybe not so connected. So yeah, hoping there'll be more of the connection and bringing people in. Oh yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
Well, I'll fill some space up with Celia's story. I was at an alternative conference one year, and the keynote speaker was Bob Whitaker, the author of Mad in America, the book. And SAMHSA wanted to disengage or cancel his keynote speakership. And Celia was key in organizing all the peers to walk out of the conference, and unless Bob Whitaker got his keynote back, they wouldn't be participating in the conference, which was quite an achievement of leadership.
Yeah, and I just want to add that I remember that conference. I didn't realize she had done that. And but that's just so Celia, and I just feel like the light in Celia's heart can light up the whole world. I mean, she's listening to her talk, she's so articulate. She makes such great distinctions. She doesn't, I wish I could speak the way that she did. And it's also from the heart. And she was able to bring together so many aspects of various aspects of our movement. So I am so glad that we are honoring her tonight. I believe in heaven, and I believe she has a very special place in heaven.
Well, Mary, you were at that conference?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember the 12 by 20 foot flag of feathers?
Yes.
Yeah, that's mine. That's what I made.
Oh, okay.
With the story sticks. I have a 12 by 20 foot American flag made out of 750 Native American story sticks, and pictures of the people I interviewed at that point are on each of the story sticks in that, because in Native American culture, it's the story stick is it's a conflict resolution tool. You, as long as you have it, possess it, and depending on what tribe you're from, some use seashells, some use bones, some use feathers. But as long as you possess this, nobody can interrupt you. And yet, when you're finished, though, you have to pass it along to whoever you're having a conflict with, and you have to listen. And you can't leave the room until resolution's made. So some tribes would be going around for 2 weeks with other tribes trying, but the deal was you go into the room and no one leaves the room until there's a resolution. And that's how I feel story is. Story is for the power of resolution, and to just to understand the give and take of opposing views and trying to find a middle ground, which we in the rights movement treasure democracy, and we're just having our democracy challenged consistently. It takes work to keep democracy in a hyper-capitalistic system as we are now enduring, and that, but yeah, I just wanted to share that with you, Mary, since you were there, because she also helped me get that on the stage, because SAMHSA wanted nothing to do with disability art back at the keynote stage and that, and yeah, it was good.
Thank you for sharing.
And we prevailed. Bob Whitaker did the keynote.
Yes.
Yes.
Scott, do we have one last video? Or is that it?
That was it. That was our 4. Because we combined 2 into 1. Yeah, we did 4 pieces.
No, I just didn't want to jump in if you got another one.
No, we've been here 2 hours. Good. And we don't leave until the last one leaves, so it's just like open forum now.
So I see a long comment from Amy, which I don't feel I could represent, but I didn't know if Amy, you wanted to speak to it.
Thank you. Well, just a little bit, here again, trying to help people in trauma. And I just keep on referring back to my own experience here with my family member. Sometimes you do have to calm people down in a physical way. And so there is fear and harm to self and harm to others potential. And de-escalating takes a special person in a special situation. And very oftentimes, I don't think it's a family member. So I think until we address these holes in the system, we're going to keep on having. Anyways, that's been my experience. I know I do talk to people in recovery and or who have come out of the system, and it just truly amazes me and gives me great hope and encouragement. And this has given me great hope and encouragement today about Celia's life and the impact of one person coming through such an awful system that is working exactly as it's intended to. Yes, I just want, it's, and we have to address the fact that, people don't want to be on these drugs. So when you come off these drugs, you have withdrawal psychosis or whatever you want to call it, or too much sugar can cause angry outbursts. So, loss of B vitamins, loss of control over your nervous system. And where there's tools, when do we have the time and a safe space to teach people better coping skills? Okay, to take them out of that crisis mode in that moment and not into a forced treatment setting, but into a place where they can relax enough and calm down enough to actually absorb some kind of sense that they're being cared for. And it's okay to feel safe, that you can love yourself enough to feel cared for. Okay. So that's one of the holes that I see. Thank you.
Well, next month, we're gonna dig into Sally Zinman, because she passed away last year.
Oh, I remember Sally.
And I think I've actually got footage in that. Cecilia was too busy at alternatives to talk to me. And she had her bases covered in that, but I think we should shine the light on Sally. She was one of the pioneers with Howie the Harp and Judi and
Wasn't she around the Bay Area there?
Berkeley.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, she used to hang out with Ed Roberts. She set up a homeless center back there in the 60s.
So I love this. I love this. And as I said, I think it's so important for us to remember the histories, because that's our foundation. If we lose that, we forget what we were doing here. But I just had a thought that I don't know if there's a heaven or not a heaven, but if there's a heaven, there's a lot of good people in it. But if there's a heaven and it's not all cracked up to what we like Celia would want it to be, I feel fairly assured she would organize and make it better.
I want to thank Susan Fitzmaurice for putting this Judy's Room together, and a special thank you to Scott Cooper for doing a really great job on showing the videos. Those were really special to me. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I know that was a lot of work. It was amazing. Thank you.
A labor of love.
Well, and this is the end of what's formal, that everybody's welcome to stay on and, either discuss and share about Celia more, or, if you would rather talk about something in a smaller group, you could hang out, and as people peel off, it gets usually about 10 people hang out for a while. You're welcome to stay. And hopefully you'll come back next month. We do this the first Wednesday of every month, same time. So you can put it on your calendars.
Same link, the same link, right? You just have to save the link that you sent earlier.
Oh,
No, I'm not sure that tonight's link, next month, the link will stay consistent. I'm not sure this
I don't
one is going
recall
to stay
getting the link
consistent.
to monthly meetings. Am I not paying attention? Am I overwhelmed?
no,
Yeah.
it's a Zoom thing.
We had a little challenge with the Zoom, and I, it could. I used to have this guy. He used to say the problem is between the chair and the keyboard, but I think I've been hearing that Zoom is a little wonky lately, so I actually think this was a Zoom thing. But yeah, look for a new link, and hopefully we'll get it figured out so that it's
I do have your email, Susan, so
do you?
yeah, and so it's the first of every month, right?
I think this digital realm is a conspiracy against boomers. It changes every 2 years. You get used to something and it doesn't work anymore.
I'll put my email in the chat. And one of the things that we're going to be developing over the next couple months is a semi-closed list for people who want to get not just announcements for Judy's Room, but have the ability to network with everybody on the list. There'll still be an announcement email that goes out, but there'll also be a closed list of people who want to be a part of a community that is willing to share offline what's going on and things that are happening. And
Yes.
let's see, we got any hands up? No, no hands up. Well, Amy, we're looking at your face. You want to say anything while your face is up there?
Oh my goodness, what should we talk about? I mean, I've said so much already. I would love to bounce off what other people might see as holes in the system and how we can support each other. And, you know, so many young people. I just came from the place. I saw one young man drooling on himself. Okay. It's like, that's what's happening, you know? And everybody's so inflamed, and I hope we're educating ourselves how we can support our self-healing systems, and the coping mechanisms, the breathing that gives us, you know, the biofeedback back we need over our autonomy, so our autonomic and nervous system. And so, yeah, it's a learning curve because we've been misinformed and mistrained. Okay. I see how I myself contributed to my son's breakdown. And that's an interesting thought to carry. You know, I don't live with any regrets at this point because I refuse to live the horrific past. Not near as horrific as others, that's for sure. My favorite thing to do is to stand in solidarity with those who are suffering unnecessarily in this world. I mean, you know, that's just what I've been doing. I was born on Christmas Day. You know, Jesus and I have this thing, you know, we want to save the world, but I'm getting over it. I really am. I'm trying, you know, I'm trying to save me first. But I still believe that we all do better when we all do better. And so I recognize that part of the Capricorn heaviness I bring in this life is the fact that when I'm not in control of myself, it doesn't matter what's going on outside of me. So I can only control myself as the world burns. The world is collapsing. You know, the system is collapsing. There is no saving this system. As you said, Scott, it's a hyper capitalist system. That will either have to collapse or it's going to kill us.